Hello, fellow watchers and enjoyers. This is a long overdue kind of bit long, but like we just waited for the dust to settle on this. This is going to be us discussing, did the Hollyoaks 30th anniversary stunt week go too far? Now again, I'm mostly going to sit back for the introduction of this. I'll give my thoughts, but this is mostly going to be Ash talking about what happened, and then we will discuss, did Hollyoaks go too far? I will say, fairly clearly, if these deal with some topics like SA, I can't really say the word, but some non-consent stuff, and like that's some harrowing stuff is being mentioned in this because of the topic that happened. Now, again, if you don't watch this video, it's understandable. You don't have to, but at the very least, thank you for at least clicking on the video and seeing, like, just at least like what's happening. So, anyways, I'm gonna hand this over to Ash for the moment, and then I'll come back. Well, I'll be still here, but I'll chime in when I can, and then we'll go through it. Did Hollyoaks go too far with the 30th anniversary stunt week? I'm gonna hand it over to Ash and let him give his point.
Right, so 30th anniversary of Hollyoaks was pretty much a rip-roaring success where they took the 30 years and did a good tribute with a lot of deaths and a lot of carnage, and it did wrap up a lot of fairly long-running stories that some people are very much happy that it's over. But alternatively, it did also start a new one, and this took place in the Hollyoaks later, which another thing to make the clarity. Hollyoaks later is essentially a post-watershed, usually slightly longer episode. There was used to be series of it where they take and depict darker topics, and it's often a theme with Hollyoaks laters is Hollyoaks laters usually has some of the most shocking Hollyoaks stuff we've ever seen. Essentially, whether it's a gruesome death, whether it's a really massive shock twist that nobody expected, like Sarah Barnes plummeting from a like falling from the sky with a tampered parachute falling to a death, like the Hollyoaks later, the death of Breeder McQueen. Hollyoaks later usually tackles a lot darker topics, does include some swearing, and well, always try and depict much darker issues in stuff you couldn't really show in a pre-watershed production. So with all that said, and with the trigger warnings in mind, let's now talk about what has really kicked off a lot of the kind of shock and terror about this, and that is what happens to Dodger Savage. Dodger, a fan favorite, essentially Hollyoaks' perennial golden boy, always comes up smelling of roses. Is pretty much always doing something, like he's always morally good. He's never really doing anything particularly bad. And he often comes up smelling roses, as I said before. But in the Hollyoaks later, there is a section where Dodger and Donnie Clark are being, and Donnie's Brookside daughter Gemma, yeah, whatever. That stuff doesn't matter. But they're being held captive by two people who are trying to steal some. There's some diamonds that have been robbed. Essentially, there's some smuggling. There's some diamonds. Blah, blah, blah. And these henchmen beat up both Dodger and Donnie and beat them to within an inch of their lives. And once again, now it's here where the trigger warning comes on in. When one of them, called Griff, beats Dodger up in the beating, he takes it too far and violates Dodger. And then we get a very overt. When soaps often tackle themes of sexual assault or rape, for example, it's usually very implied. It's usually very, you know what's going to happen, but not much of it is shown. And the way Hollyoaks did it is they essentially did pretty much a fairly long shot where you see basically the entire act. You see the entire act happen. Obviously, you see you know enough to know what's happening. You see the whole act. You see someone reacting like because Donnie's still in the room, so he's seeing this take place, and you see obviously Dodger's reaction to this. And obviously, depicting such a graphic depiction of sexual violence, it would always shock an audience. It would always kind of really stun the audience. And we saw a lot of that with the reactions to it online. I mean, I was doing a live stream whilst doing this, seeing this happen, and the the room went silent. We all just kind of went, "What?" Like that. The reactions are still in there. You can go find my specific reaction to it. It was a really shocking moment to see because in what was otherwise a fairly chill kind of Hollyoaks later, where it wasn't super dark and it wasn't super intense until that moment where it suddenly got very, very real. Um, and that's the same sort of stuff online. The same sort of stuff online. A lot of shock, people disgusted that why would they show this and why would they show such a graphic thing, and kind of people really unsure of how to think or feel about it. And I think now it's a generally interesting point to kind of question of, was it too far and why are people getting upset?
I think I'll just give my thoughts, and then obviously I'll let you do it because you're more knowledgeable because you've seen the episode. I haven't, so by the way, because I don't really want to go with the episode. In all honesty, just to
I think
clarify that.
funny enough, I think the episode's kind of not on. I think it's not lost media, but it's I don't think it's available anymore. I don't know why.
But what I will say is, and I need to clarify this, there's a difference between pre and post watershed. Ash alluded to it earlier, but post watershed.
I lie, it's still available.
Okay, sorry for that sarcastic. Okay, but what I will just preference here for people who are not British or Irish watching this channel, which if you're not, hello. But I will say, if you don't know the difference between pre and post watershed, pre watershed is typically what you have to adhere to for families. So pre watershed is where like you get iCarly, Drake and Josh, EastEnders. It's where you can loosely swear, you can say bitch, you can get away with a bitch and maybe a little bastard, and that's mostly it. But there's no real swearing and there's no real violence. Like if again, it's the example I give is when Zoe in EastEnders got shot. You hear the gun go off. You see the aftermath of the bullet damaging Zoe, but you do not see the impact of the bullet impacting Zoe because it's pre-watershed and there is strict guidelines to that. Now, post-watershed is where you can let the animals run wild in a sense. You can say fuck, you can say shit, you can say the C word, but you can only say it like, you can say that multiple times. But I can't say the C word because we're on YouTube. Um, but post-watershed, you can basically, there's still guidelines, but it's a lot looser because now, I need to say this. The kids should be in bed by 9. Is basically what this
I mean,
guideline
this
is.
episode was aired at 10:05.
Yeah. So the kids should be in bed by then. I say should be because it's up to the parent. It's not up to the TV to tell them to go to bed. It's up to the parent. But this airing at 10 p.m. means they can say the words like fucking shit, and they can show a bit more darker storylines. I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I believe they gave a trigger warning at the start of the episode, didn't they?
Yeah, there was a warning about sexual violence.
And I think
And there have been beyond as well in every episode where it's now addressed.
and I think the matter is it too far? To me, there's a fine line you have to do in pre and post watershed. You have to find the line where it's not going to upset people, but it's not going to be too far in a sense. Um, Again, what I mean by that is it's why in pre watershed when a sexual assault happens, you you typically see the start reaction and then it pans away and it's alluded, everything else is alluded to, and then the characters can bring it up. It's never really shown because again, pre-watershed, you have to be, those kids have to, they can't see that. And then post-watershed, obviously, they showed it. My take on this is, with it being post-watershed, yes, there's a lot looser guidelines, but showing it is like, it's a very ballsy move, and I do like. I understand the saying of like controversy creates cash, but given the current climate and considering it's also 2025 and not 1995, we have changed over time. I know I know you're gonna look at me and go, "What do you mean by this?" In the 90s, like, yes, it would still be inherently wrong to see, but with the culture wars and shift of like times, yeah, this is to me not the way you really go. Uh, I don't really know how to word it, but like, I feel like you've jumped the shark metaphorically. Again, there will be people saying it's not that, just go over it, bro. It's not that serious. But again, it's better when it's don't Piggy, be careful with your words. But it's better when it's alluded to, because then you don't upset people. It's alluded to, and then basically it's your imagination. You can let what you want to be like. You can imagine what's happening and what happened and all sorts of that. But when you physically show it, yeah, you have to admit you're going to get people going, why the fuck did you do that? And that is my general consensus: is why the fuck did you do that? And I could be wrong, but I think
I mean,
to show it, it's extremely fucked up, and you should have expected the backlash, because you can't really, do it and then be like, why is everyone complaining? You know. But I'll let you give your thought.
I disagree. I think it's an important thing to be depicted. I think it's important for it to be shown, and I think that we still like. Now, this is gonna sound a bit more like social issue type stuff. I definitely think there's still an issue in society of taking like male sexual violence. Still think there's a big prevalent issue of it not being taken as seriously, just like domestic violence with like among like with men being the victim is still like in these sorts of instances you still need to depict these issues because they are very important. Because it's a big deal and it does happen. It does happen. And it's not like it's immune to soap like we saw it in Coronation Street, where once again it was well, we saw it in Coronation Street like 7, 8 years ago with one of the more popular Coronation Street characters with David Platt, and then in this instance he gets drugged with GHB, and then you see the guy like unbuckle his trousers, and then we see the aftermath. Hollyoaks has depicted it a lot in the past. One of its most famous storylines is Luke Morgan, and in 2002, they depicted it then as well. And I think that I still think there would have been a lot of outcry either way. But I also think that there is an aspect of this where people are a little bit heightened because it was like male sexual violence. Um, might be a kind of controversial take, but it still feels like there's still, as I've kind of alluded to, it still feels like there is a definite kind of trepidation to even like look that way. A lot of people just kind of look away and be like, "Oh, what?" Ugh. They don't really want to think about it. They don't really want to see it. Um, but do I think it went too far? I don't think so. I think it was for what it is. For Hollyoaks later, you depict, as I've always kind of said, you depict some of the more harrowing shit. That's what you do. For example, I don't remember which Hollyoaks late season it was. I think it may be one of the earlier ones. It may be season 2 or 3. You have all the like the young adults. They go to like a big festival, and they all stay in this they all stay in this house, which is like it's basically a drug house essentially. They all stay in a drug house essentially. And the one that really fucked me up is there's this woman here who one of the guys is like kind of getting with and kind of they're getting together, and then you slowly realize that this girl is basically staying in this house, essentially used to garner favor with people that the guy's selling drugs to. She's essentially been used as like a she's being used for sex in all different ways. And you see her wanting to kind of escape this life, but in the end she just goes back to the house and her life resumes. She's just being exploited for sex. And that's not really that's not exactly a walk in the park. That's not exactly something you just wave off and you go, like that goes, what the fuck? It sits with you. It sits with you, and that's kind of what Hollywood to be. It's supposed thing that you will watch, and if it actually is done well, you'll probably you're probably not going to sleep that easy that night. I know a lot of us. I know a lot of people who did watch the episodes. For the next couple of days, are all just a little bit wary because we're still in our head, just like, did we really fucking see that? And I think that's important to do. I think it's important to sure, because now it's kind of now as a topic in a lot of our minds, it's undeniable. There's no like illusions. This happens. It's been depicted. It does happen. And now it kind of sits in the audience. And once again, to kind of represent these issues on screens, it is very important to do so, because for some people, this will be all they will see of it. Some people live a very sheltered existence. Some people gain knowledge through watching these shows. And it's I don't think they went too far. I think it definitely struck the audience, and there was indeed trigger warnings. I do think it blindsided a lot of the audience, who we didn't exactly know that was where it was going to go, and that's why there's a lot of shock. I don't, I like, I if people want to complain to Ofcom, that's fine. You're perfectly in your right to do that. If it upsets you that much, that's reasonable. Like but the fact that it has kind of generated so much, I'm going to use the word buzz, probably not the right term, but that it generated so much kind of I mean, so the thing, like before an earthquake, the ground starts to shake. That's what you can tell it's about to get real. Where there was a genuine kind of outcry. There was a genuine kind of shock, and it was arguably, despite the 30th anniversary of Hollyoaks being such a kind of loud and so many things happened and so many deaths happened, it was the period on the end of the sentence, right? It kind of, and if that's the most memorable thing about the Hollyoaks 30th anniversary, amongst everything else that happened, I think it's been done well. Now, where it can go wrong is if it was just for shock value. That's what happens if it's wrong. If it's wrong, and the next episode, Dodger's just happy, and he's like, "Wait, it didn't happen, did it? Wait, blah, blah, blah," that's obviously doing it wrong. That's not how you do it. But Hollyoaks has kind of announced that it will become a long-running storyline, and it is going to become a big topical social issue throughout the next year. So that shows that they're committed, and obviously they're working with charities as well. That shows that they're committed to depicting this in a genuinely fair and reasonable light. If they just did it for pure shock value, which they did, they did do it for shock value, but if they went and then kind of discarded how the aftermath is going to be, then you can say it went too far. But it's the other crux of its soaps, and some characters will get pushed in these directions. Some characters will go to a certain extent. I mean, even then, you say characters going too far. Even with Hollyoaks, you can suggest that Grace Black, a character, was killed off in the 30th anniversary because she was written to be involved in a massive human exploitation ring, and groomed a bunch of teenagers into being exploited, and she was involved in this, and then the actress went, "Well, how the fuck? How am I supposed to come back from this? My character was exploiting teenagers. How is my character supposed to come back from this? And now that character's been killed off. That's going too far to kind of do this to a character and then go, yeah, the audience will still root for them, right? No, it's no. So there are limits and there are differences. But I genuinely like Hollyoaks has been one of the most active kind of participants in showing male sexual violence, and I don't think it needs to be because like what's the alternative? Do we just not do it? Do we just not depict it? Do we just not depict an issue that happens? I like that's you can put your fingers in your ears and do la la la. It does happen, guys. I'm
I
sorry.
I I do agree with you for the most part. I do agree. You've really opened my eyes to like this. I will say I think the more issue it comes down to is the fact of, oh, what's the word I'm trying to say here? It's the fact of like I can't really think what I'm trying to say, but it's just that kind of shock value that it was done, and that's where people were unexpecting it, so it kind of just created a giant fucking like bubble,
Oh,
and
a lot of people were like lashing out and just upset and openly like vocal, and that's obviously equally, yeah, that's fine. Like,
I do agree with you that we do have to show these kinds of things, but it just depends where the limit is. An example, because I was going to make this into an essay kind of video, essay, not yeah, just to clarify there. And the comparison I was going to give is, and this is going too far, is basically in Ireland we have this thing called the road safety, which is basically protecting people not to drink and drive. Now, in the 2000s and late 90s and early 2010s, I should put, just those 3 decades, some lunatic, I don't know who it was, at the Road Safety Ireland offices decided we just want to do the most horrific shit possible. Everyone has probably seen it's been memed on because of how like it's that kind of shock value where it becomes sort of funny but not really. But where if you know the famous one is someone singing "Sweet Child of Mine" and a child pushes a car and then a car speeds around a bend and goes flying over a wall and crushes all the children, and then the ad's like, "Don't drink and drive. This is what happens." That's going too far for the pure fact of you're scaring people. You're not trying to advise them. You're genuinely scaring kids. And I need to clarify this. This ad originally, from what I remember, and this is going based off my childhood. From what I remember, this ad would not air like this ad would not air post 9 o'clock. This ad would air like 4 or 5 p.m. Like it would be in the daytime. Is what I'm saying. Like a daytime television, like what's usually on at a hospital or something. But it literally got so much backlash because again, you're fucking showing kids being crushed here, mate. That they had to, the road safety Ireland had to be like, yep, sorry about that. We're banning the ad. It will be on a post-watershed. It's still horrific, but that is an example of where I would say, I know that's an ad and it's completely different to what happens in a show, but that is where they went too far. And again, if you want to seek those Road Safety Ireland ads out, go right ahead. Or it's called the Road Safety Association, I think, the RSA. Um, and they're just horrific. I've watched another one recently where it's a kid playing football, and then and it's just another kid growing up playing football, and then the guy goes for a drink, and then he comes around and then he drinks and drives, and then he goes around the bend again, and he goes flying into a garden, crushes a child, and then the dad runs in and like hugs the child. And one other one, I know this it's slight tangent, but one other one that stuck with me was because I went down this rabbit hole because I was obviously trying to research for the video I was going to do, and I went down the rabbit hole,
You can
and
still do
yeah, I know I
it.
can still do it. I probably will. But what I was gonna say is the third one that I watched, which is also extremely fucked up, and I will get away from it in a second. But the third one I watched was there was this man and woman, and they're obviously having a shift or having an old kiss, and again, this car is drink drive. The car's drink driving. Person is drink driving. He a car crashes into him. He swerves, and then I'm not making this up. He literally impales the guy, like like like. So this is the wall. This is the wall, and this is the wall, and this is the car. The car literally comes up and literally impales the guy, like crushes him, and crushes the woman, kills the guy instantly, I believe. And that's again something that goes too far. Is you're putting fear into people. You're generally scaring them. You're not being, like the difference I'm trying to make here is the fact is Hollyoaks were trying to be aware of trying to show this issue of like how it happens in society. Whereas again, what I was giving an example of was that they were trying to do, yeah, this is what happens in society, but they were doing it extremely wrong. And also, just to end my rant, um, I do agree with your focal point. I do agree with everything. I feel like we do have to show these kinds of things in society. It's just how you kind of sway the narrative is all I can really add to it, because you can depict these things, but if you do it in a way where it upsets people, I can understand. And I do agree you are allowed to voice your opinion, whether you want to voice your displeasure with Ofcom or whoever owns Channel 4. Um, you can. Um, is it too far rethinking about it? It just depends on what type of person you are. I mean, that might sound incredibly wrong, but
I
it
mean,
just
it's just whatever. Like everybody has their trauma.
yeah.
If you have anything even remotely similar to this will, it's probably might take you back there or anything like that. Like it's a, and usually the biggest issues that people care about are often, well, not often stuff they've gone through, but like stuff that people may view as like the worst. Like I think that like the whole point is if it's bad, it's gratuitous and it's unnecessary and doesn't actually do anything better. It would be like if you depicted Little Mo and Trevor, and instead of actually showing like Little Mo's journey from like slowly finding a voice and slowly kind of understanding what to do, and then you build and you build and you build to the moment where Little Mo like fights back. But it would just be like if every week you had Trevor throw in Little Mo's face into like different bits of food or whatever. And it's like this is unnecessary. This isn't something you need to show. You're just kind of you're it's just unnecessary in that way. And like you can take it for some things. Like there are different points in time where soaps have gone too far. One of the most shocking like deaths in Coronation Street is where you had this serial killer called Patrick Phelan, who basically kept a guy called Andy Hunter and someone else. He kept them held hostage, right? He kept them like stuck alone, and it was pre-watershed. And this killer forces one of the guys he's keeping to shoot the other one. And then, after he's shot the other guy, the murderer kills him himself. And it's like, what the fuck, you know? Like that's probably a bit too far. That's probably a little bit extreme. That's probably a bit unnecessary, that is. Um but it's usually just people just have it's a thing. It's the moral outrage kind of stuff, really. Where if you depict a social issue that's a bit taboo, people will often kind of be like, what is this?" You're setting a bad example for my kids, or you're setting a bad example for my family, and it's just people complaining about stuff that, like, if, for some instances, people are just complaining about how the fact that they are now having to have a serious conversation with their kids and explain why this is a thing that happens. But for this instance, kids probably shouldn't have seen the Hollyoaks later, and if they had, that's I'm sorry, but like that there are supposed to be locks. There are supposed to be stuff to make sure you don't see it. This is a show you don't show your kid. There are age ranges for a reason.
Um,
Um,
but I will chime in, and I agree with this point because if you don't know, lads, I am a fan of like South Park and Family Guy. I know this is a weird tangent to bring into this, but I'm sort of a fan of like the adult animation shows. And for a while, like, and I know this is hypocritical because my dad did show me these shows when I was 8 years old, and I fell in love with South Park. But I kind of knew that like not many people are supposed to watch this. It's supposed to be a hush hush if you're watching this underage. Like it's your fault basically for stumbling onto it. And I agree with that because I think you can police children, but you can't blame the television or the online or whatever that it's their fault the kids know too much. It's your own
I'll
parenting.
also reiterate there is a specific trigger warning on the thing with a thing called guidance, and it says strong language, drugs, scenes of violence, and scenes of sexual violence that some viewers may find distressing. This program isn't suitable for younger viewers. By clicking play, you confirm you are over 18 years old.
Exactly. And it's not, oh, just the wrong overlay. And it's not like the people's fault. It's not a child's fault for stumbling upon this. The parents should have more responsibility. And I know this is a very word, and why seem like we're anti-parents, but like if your child discovers something that you don't want them to discover, it's your own fault. It's not your child's fault because the child is a fucking idiot. It's not his fault. He stumbled upon it. It's because you're misguided, let him there. I know that's very weird coming from me, but you can't be mad that your child stumbled upon this and saw essay when it clearly says in the fucking caption of before the episode starts that these scenes will be depicted. So in that instance, for like say a parent like accidentally showing the child, it's the parent's fault. Like there's clear unless you physically cannot read, like you
I'm going
can.
to say that a lot of people will have watched it live, and I don't. I think there was a trigger warning before, but obviously you don't get that warning if you're just watching it live. So I think there was before, but it's kind of uncertain.
But yeah, and that's basically where I want to take it and kind of end it is do do you think for future references shows can go a bit more farther? Is that the word I'm trying to look for? Do you think basically shows can take stuff a bit more to the limit, or is there a limit in soaps? What is the limit? Is what I'm trying to say. Like, what is the
I
limit?
I mean the limit's on a case by case basis essentially. It has to be within reason. It has to be it has to be tactful. It has to have an intention. You don't just show something really dark and terrifying without the intention to fully flesh it out and actually explain why this has happened and kind of allow it to allow the audience to understand why you would do something like this. And Hollyoaks is a pretty proven track record of dealing with male sexual violence, and they have always tended to do a really strong job of showing showing how the victim will face, and often showing the abuser kind of facing justice essentially. So on a case by case basis, as long as it has the right clear intention and it isn't overt, or no, and it isn't, trying to pick the right word for this, as long as it isn't kind of made to be this spectacle just for shock value. It needs to actually be developed. You can't just throw it out there at one random week and then expect people to be happy with it. Because if you don't actually do your due diligence and show it in the correct way, obviously then you are open for scrutiny. Because then you are essentially you kind of you're not necessarily. I'm trying to find a better word, but the only word I'm having is like clickbaiting. Essentially, you are kind of going, "Hey, look at this really fucked up thing that happens." Isn't that
Misleading.
really bad social issue, and it's like,
Misleading.
yeah, yeah, misleading. Like, you don't I think all of that to finally say for me personally is, did Hollyoaks go too far? I don't think so. Um, but I will also argue that Hollyoaks Hollyoaks only really operates for these storylines typically for special occasions or one-offs. It's not like they're doing this every week. It's not like they're doing this every single year. Hollyoaks later hasn't been on screens for at least, what, 5 years now. And it's a statement to try and tackle such a thing. And I think that they've done it justice so far. But if you do it too frequently or you keep on trying to do it too many times, at that point it does become arduous, it becomes too much, and then you're essentially just not bastardizing it, but then you are essentially just doing it too much.
I agree with your sentiment, like, completely. It just depends really on it's a base by basis thing in my eyes, where it depends where you want to put the figurative line in the sand. Because again, for me or you, it might not be too far, but for Jeff who has experienced this, it might be too far for him. Again, it's a base by basis thing. It's just depending where you think the limit is what I want to say. And
Yeah, exactly.
I do,
We all have different limits. We all have
yeah.
different stuff that hits us harder.
And like an example I can give is like Ash watches horror movies, um, and he watches them. But obviously, for a person like me, I don't really like horror, so he doesn't really show me horror movies because I don't like horror. The only horror I know is Saw, which is still fucked up, but it's the only one I really like. I don't know why I chuckled there, but yeah, it's just again, it's like watching a horror movie. You have to know your limits. Um, you could even give the extreme example if you want to ask about you and Slater fucking stumbling across one of the worst horror movies ever. But I don't know if you want to give that in this video.
Probably not the right time.
Yeah, probably not the right time. But but yeah, like I said, there's a limit to it, and it just depends where your limit is. Again, for me, I'm on both the fence of it can be too far, but it just depends where you stand in the sand, basically. And I also agree that if you basically mislead people and you basically go, yeah, he was sexually assaulted, that's it, yeah. Anyways, fucking Gemma's selling pancakes. Everyone buys some pancakes. It's like, what? What? I've just seen a gruesome thing here. I know you're selling me pancakes. What's going on here? Like there is a limit,
Yeah,
and
you don't want there to be cognitive dissonance. You go, oh, something really bad happened. Oh, and what is happening now? You need it to be like I said, you need to be a concerted effort to actually depict it in as much detail as you humanly can without going too far. And obviously, once again, the line is hard to draw, but there is typically a line that you can kind of follow. And as we've said, that line that line is subjective. It comes down to everybody else's interpretation. Some of this is too far. Some people don't like to see these darker issues depicted, and that's fine as well. But some people also find it important to represent these issues in such a kind of humor, in such an unapologetic way, where in other cases this sort of topic is more implied, but this one was pretty graphic. um it all comes down to your perspective, but equally you are allowed to react in whatever way you feel necessary, as it was a very sensitive issue that was being depicted very broadly, very loudly, and it can upset different people for a multitude of different reasons.
yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that as well. It's just it's subjective. It's like I know this batshit comparison. It's like people who want Jeremy Kyle back, but it's like we should keep that in the past because for most people who, for most people that was a bit like, yeah, because if you don't know how Jeremy Kyle ended, basically a granddad went on to the show I believe it was a granddad. It was an older gentleman. He went on the show and basically had to take a lie detector test. The lie detector test, which is proven not to be true most of the time, basically came back and said, "Yeah, you were cheating on on your partner." And he went, "I wasn't. Your lie detector test is faulty. I wasn't." And then he was labelled as a cheater, a serial cheater. And then sadly, the guy took his own life, and basically that's why Jeremy Kyle doesn't air anymore. That was like the straw that broke the camel's back. And for some people, they might look at that as an example and go, "That's a bit too far." Like literally lambasting someone on national television who's telling you he's not a cheater, and then you're going, "Well, you are a fucking cheater," and it's like, "I'm not though. I'm being honest." And then obviously how it ends. Again, that's an extreme example, but again, it's just subjective. Again, it's just like horror, like watching a horror movie, like watching old TV shows from the 1950s, and then you see they're doing blackface. Like, it's just all subjective about where you draw the line in the sand, and where what is acceptable in your eyes and what isn't acceptable in your eyes. And that's where I kind of want to end it, because again, it all comes down to what you think is really too far and what's not too far. And that I hope you enjoy this 40-minute discussion piece, because I liked it, and I think we did an alright job at tackling this without trying to be overtly funny, and just try and be
I mean, it's a serious discussion.
yeah, it was a serious discussion. And yeah, and I do think, again, you can let us know down below if you think it was too far or if it was necessary. Again, I probably didn't allude to it earlier on, but yeah, like I said, I am in the fence of it depends. Like, I'm just in the middle where I'm like, it's yeah and no, but it's more like it just depends, really. Um, and I hope you enjoy this video. We will see you in the next one. Bye bye. Bye bye.